Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the full council. I'd like to remind everyone present that the meeting will be filmed by the council and will be broadcast live on the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. So if you're seated in the chamber, it's possible that the camera will capture your image. Please could I also remind everyone to ensure their mobile phones are switched off or on silent. Right, item 1, I will ask my chaplain to say prayers.
Let us pray. O eternal Lord God, from whom alone cometh wisdom and understanding, we beseech thee to direct aright the minds of those who are about to take counsel together on matters pertaining to the common life of this borough of Christchurch, that in all their deliberations and decisions they may faithfully discharge the duties of their office and ever promote the health, safety and well-being of those they seek to serve, for the honour and glory of thy name. Amen.
Amen.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you. You can all sit down, thank you. Oops. Right. Oh. Item 2 on our agenda, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've had an apology from Councillor Davis and Councillor Mrs Phipps. I understand is stuck in traffic at the moment and will be a little late.
Yes, Councillor Phipps will be here later on. And I imagine that's why Councillor Spittle was a little late. She comes from the same direction, in the same traffic queue. Item 3, declarations of interest by members. Are there any declarations of interest to be made by members? No, that looks like a no. Item 4, minutes. To confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting which we held on the 10th of July 2018. Have I got a proposer for those minutes? Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to propose as set out. Thank you.
Right. And a seconder? Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to second as set out.
Right, members. Can we vote for the acceptance of those minutes?
Unanimous.
Unanimous, thank you. So we don't need to ask for objections then, do we? Very good. Right. Now, announcements. I have got a few announcements. It looks as though I've got more, but it's very big print, so don't get worried. It's and I really would like to tell you all about all of them because they're so interesting, but I'm only going to pick a very few. And the first one, 14th of July this year, we started off the Christchurch leg of a long journey of a token which was celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Royal Air Force. And it went from Christchurch Priory and it was going, I think, to Poole. It had been all around the country, so it was very interesting. And they were actually running with it. It was, when I say token, you think I mean a tiny little thing. No, it was a great big stick with a scroll in. I can only describe it as. And as I've bored everybody with this year, my grandfather J.J. Boyd Harvey was in the First World War in one of those flimsy flying machines, and so I've got a real interest in this anniversary. Then on 20th of July, we went to Macmillan Caring locally, obviously at Christchurch Hospital, where they are, and the Lord Lieutenant, Angus Campbell, presented the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service to the voluntary group. It's the highest award anybody can get in this country. So, and I think many of us have been touched by the work they do. I certainly know a load of people who have. They really are good folk down there, and to see them acknowledged by the Queen was wonderful. And also they put on such a good tea that it was a lovely afternoon, not only the tea, obviously. And the other thing I'd like to pick out of the long list of what we've done was the carnival on the 19th of August. That's a year of hard work by the volunteers, and it culminates in a weekend of, I can only describe as revelry. And I know it was a bit loud this year. I think it was a bit over loud, but equally it brought a lot of cheer, and the procession was lovely. So that was a very nice thing to be present at. We were in the balcony, so we were looking down on all the floats. And I'd like to thank Trish for coming to all those. It was very, very cheering to have her there. Right, that's my announcements over. Have we announcements from the leader?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No announcements this evening.
Oh,
Thank you.
righty-ho. It's, right. The Strategic Director.
Nothing from me, Madam Mayor.
I think at this point I'd like to say that we still wish our Chief Executive well. He's recovering, I understand, and I hope he'll be, not that I don't want you here, Ian, but I hope he'll be on this platform next time, fully recovered. Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Right, item 6, questions by members of the public. Have we any questions?
No, Madam Mayor.
Oh, righty-ho. Item 7, petitions by members of the public. Right, it's been a very quiet month all round then. Questions by members of the council. We have no members of the council wishing to ask a question, apparently. Okay. Right, now item 9 on the agenda. I'm going to have to excuse me while I turn over the page. The urgent key decision. We're asking members to note this. It's written out in full on your sheets. It was an urgent key decision made, and it's as set out within the agenda. I don't know if any members wish to comment or whether we're content to make a note of that. Thank you. That's noted then. All right, item 10. Notice of motion. I invite Councillor Flagg to present and propose the notice of motion. It's all set out on the agenda, and I think there are several pages. Thank you, Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just rise to formally propose as set out on this evening's agenda. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder for that, Councillor Flagg? Yes, Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mrs. Mayor. I really called you Madam Mayor.
That's not too familiar.
It's okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Right, does any member wish to speak on this item? Is that Councillor Nottage? Thank you, Councillor Nottage.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want assurances from the leader associated with the item 15.2 of the Constitution, which is the 6-month rule, and understanding that the rescinding of decisions taken at the last meeting and so on are making this motion legal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nottage. I don't know whether that's Councillor Flagg or Mr. Jones.
Madam Mayor, councillors, I can confirm the motion as set out, rescinding the resolution in May and resetting the committees. The numbers of seats on those committees and the membership is a lawful motion.
Thank you. Councillor Flagg, did you want to come in to answer Councillor Nottage?
No, just thank the officer for his confirmation of that. Thank you, Madam.
Right, Councillor Bath.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question, but then I would like to still speak on the item. I wanted to ask the reasoning behind this motion being put to the council, because there is no reasoning in the documents in front of us as to why this change has been proposed.
Thank you, Councillor Bath. Councillor Flagg, I think you can answer this one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, as leader of the council, I need to be certain that all committees within the council are led by members who I am confident will work towards a transparent and common aim on behalf of our residents. I do not believe those who have worked against the stated wishes of the council and acted against agreed council policy can achieve this. This was clearly demonstrated when 9 members wrote an open letter to the Minister expressing a view that was directly opposite to this council's position. Regrettably, as a consequence, it has now been necessary to make changes to the committee structure to ensure the agreed council policy and position is adhered to as we work towards the transition of the new authority. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Flagg. I have Councillor Spittle, I believe, what wishes. Is that a question, Councillor Spittle? Oh, right, okay, fine. No, do.
May I just thank the leader for his advice. In fact, a vindictive, asinine proposal is how some members of the residents have actually described this reorganisation of this committee structure, and from what he has just said, it is quite evident. It's also ironic that it follows item 8 in this agenda, where the leader and also vice chairman of Overview and Scrutiny Committee had to accept the advice of this council's section 151 officer somewhat begrudgingly. Knowing that certain speakers are concerned with history rather than finances, such as the costs involved with the rearrangement, may I quote a resident? With only 7 months to go, it's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. So, in that case, does the leader agree with me that this could be seen as a vindictive proposal?
Madam Mayor, no, I do not agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flagg. Thank you, Councillor Spittle. Councillor Grace, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to say that actually I didn't sign the letter that went to the Secretary of State, so I'd like that to be amended and noted if possible, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to change my statement to 8 rather than 9. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. I think that's noted by all of us. Sorry, who's was it Councillor Bath again? Oh, well, I thought Councillor Bath wanted to come back. Oh, right. What was the end? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the public. The Planning Committee is a quasi-judicial committee where the decisions are made based on having material grounds for approval or refusal. It's our record of good decision-making in recent times that has stood us in good stead in the light of negative reports from outside agencies. As the soon-to-be ex-chairman of planning, I would like to say thank you to the work of those in the planning department. It's taken much hard work and advice from the Planning Advisory Service last year to remove us from a risk of being designated, a decision that would have resulted in planning decisions being removed from the auspices of this council. The planning service in Christchurch is currently performing at its best. In that light, the next planning committee has been cancelled to allow time for new members to the committee to be adequately trained to deal with complex issues raised in the applications to be decided. I believe the changes in this motion will reduce the representation of our residents across the council, with some members taking on 5 or 6 committees and others reduced to just 1, not a balanced split. Whilst we have, as a council, been split over the question of how best to ensure the future of services in Christchurch, I believe we all want the best future. We just see different solutions. Reducing the input from experienced and knowledgeable members merely reduces the width and breadth of discussion when important decisions are made. As one member is remembered to have said, in a council with only a small opposition, it is vital we make our own opposition and ensure a proper discussion and scrutiny of all decisions is made, and reduced committee membership does not allow this scrutiny and discussion. I cannot support the motion, not because I will lose my position as chairman, because I believe this will result in a narrowing of democracy in Christchurch and that it is based on emotions and not objective strategic thinking.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Does anybody else wish to speak? Oh, sorry, Councillor Nottage.
To ask a question of the leader, actually, because I did not find his answer to Councillor Grace satisfactory. he's obviously applied the same rules to Councillor Grace, who didn't sign the letter, to the ones who did. I wonder if he's going to make any adjustments accordingly, or he's going to make an apology, or is he going to make apology to the Councillor Grace as to apology? Thank you.
Yes, I'll take the point of order. Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, we are not discussing a report, we are discussing a motion. We are not asking a question, we have not had on this particular point a question of fact. It is a question of opinion. Madam Mayor, we should be debating, we should not be interrogating. I am sure that points raised in the debate will be answered either by the leader in his summing up or by other members in discussion. So, Madam Mayor, may I ask that we now revert to a proper debate, please?
Thank you, Councillor. I was under the impression that we were debating, although I was feeling that it was a rather different debate than our normal debates. Does any other member wish to enter the debate? Councillor Hallam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just really wanted to ask and make a statement with regards to the changes. We've already spoken to the fact that there's only 7 months to go, and with only 7 months to go and these changes, which are significant changes to committees, the number of officer hours to train and get the members up to speed. There's also, the actual training requirements of the individuals around these committees themselves. And that goes without to mention anything else that needs to be brought into the frame in terms of finances. The other thing I'd like to ask is the fact that these committee changes have all happened and of the proposals on the table, do we think that perhaps it should actually be reviewed by scrutiny? Thank you.
Councillor Bath, do you wish to enter the debate before we finalise?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The responses to the reasoning behind this motion horrify me. At a time where we should be looking for stability and calm in a time of change, we are creating disharmony and chaos. It appears that the proposed committee membership changes are not as a result of ensuring the most experienced members sit on committees that ensure quality decision making, but are the result of the bitterness felt by those councillors who did not support the future Dorset proposals now that their judicial review has failed, towards the councillors who looked at the bigger picture of affordability of services to our residents. The current council structure is not what makes Christchurch special. The comments made that those councillors who support the new structure want to destroy Christchurch are unfounded, unfair and vindictive. Every councillor sat around this room loves Christchurch, but Christchurch is not the council. Christchurch is its unique natural environment, its 2 converging rivers, its beautiful natural harbour, its heritage, its ancient buildings, its fantastic community and voluntary sector, its people, all of which will not change under a management restructure to provide public services. The councillors who have perpetuated Project Fear, scaring residents into believing that a new structure will be the end of Christchurch, should be disgusted at their behaviour. Our job as elected members is to protect frontline services for our residents, not to protect our own roles. As our chaplain said at the start of this meeting, we should promote the health, safety and well-being of those we serve. Those who understood the financial pressures reluctantly realised that the only way to maintain services was to restructure the management that provides them. They are now being vindictively punished by those that perpetuated Project Fear with no other plan than to perpetuate a structure that was unviable. Shame on you for your approval of spending of over £34,000 of local council taxpayers' money on a local poll that we were strongly advised would make little difference to the Secretary of State's decision on local government restructure. Shame on you for then spending over £107,000 of local council taxpayers' money employing barristers and a legal team to fight the Secretary of State on his decision in the Old Bailey. Shame on you for now not trying to work together through maintaining the stability of the current committee structure for the best of Christchurch, but instead trying to punish those who saw the bigger picture and voted in favour of LGR. This motion promotes disharmony within this council, which does not benefit the residents of Christchurch. We should instead be working hard together to ensure stability for this period of change to get the best deal for Christchurch in the new council. I will not be supporting this motion.
Councillor Watts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members, I've only got one question. To the leader, what good do you think is going to come out of these changes? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watts. I think that I think everybody has had a fair say in this debate. The motion before us is that the Council rescinds the resolution set out as Minute 10 of the 15th of May 2018, committee structure, allocation of seats to political groups and the committee membership, and resolves that the number of members on each principal committee and the membership of those committees shall be as set out. You have that all in front of you. We've had a full discussion on it. I'm going to ask if we can go to the vote. All those in favour?
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Were there any abstentions?
There was 1.
Thank you. Yes, that motion is carried then, members, and we move on now to item 11. Councillor Lofts, you're indicating.
Madam Mayor, may I have your permission, please, to remain seated for the remainder of the meeting?
Absolutely, Councillor. Right, item 11 before us on our agenda is the notice of motion regarding local government reorganisation. I'm going to invite Councillor Jones to present and propose this notice as set out on the agenda and below. So, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of Council, I have the honour to propose the motion which I understand Councillor Hall will second, which stands in our names. Madam Mayor, this is not a rerun of the arguments that we've heard presented so passionately, and I suspect possibly rather artificially by some speakers in the previous debate. I will make one comment.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Could we actually cut out the biting part of this part? I think we're trying to be sensible.
Thank you, Councillor.
And sensible.
Thank you, Councillor Nottingham. I would really appreciate that too.
Thank you.
From all sides of
Thank
this
you.
chamber. Councillor Jones, please carry on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I said, and I do not withdraw any of those remarks,
Carry on.
we are now in a new position. We have 7 months left in which we have to structure Christchurch. I hoped I would never have to propose this sort of motion. Unfortunately, there it is. The decision, which is now irrevocable, at least in the short term, has been taken. And as in British politics, it is usual for as those of us who've stood on a platform speaking second at election time will know, it is customary to pay tribute to the victor. And so I will congratulate the former leader of this council on his victory and that of his colleagues. It is theirs, they have worked for it. And as I said, it is appropriate to congratulate him on achieving what he has set out to do. Whether the voters next May will feel such remains to be seen. But we're now in the process here of saying that we have to take into account certain factors. One factor that this motion takes into account, as we've already done the item before that, which is we note formally that our long struggle is over. And at this point, I would like to pay tribute and thank on behalf of this council our leader, David Flagg, who has led this council very well and very carefully and very courageously in the light of some of the abuse that we know he's suffered. To thank his deputy leader, because I know just how much of a support she has been to David throughout this time. And I would like to also that this council should express its thanks to our MP, Chris Chope, who has unfailingly supported the elected members of this council, the majority in this council chamber, in fulfilling the mandates that we have had from the electorate. So we now have to move through the next point, which is to make sure that we do say very clearly, this is not our choice. We do not agree with future Dorset. It will damage this borough. In fact, I understand that you can already hear the cries of delight from the other side of the river as they contemplate all the green space that will be theirs, or building site, whichever is appropriate. Now, we must move on, though, to the damage limitation. And what I think we must concentrate on now is ensuring that our successor councils, and I do not mean the council that will cover the Greater Bournemouth area, they are our supplanters, not our successors. But the parish councils and town councils, I hope we will set up later this evening. We need to make sure that they have the ability to give the residents of Christchurch that local democracy that otherwise will be lost. And I cite in this chamber our chief executive, who 3 years ago now did admit that one of the problems with a unitary authority, and a unitary authority as big as the one that has been created, is that it will be remote. And a town council will be some sort of remedy to that. So we need to make sure that we can support and set these councils off properly. There is one other problem, and this is a very serious one. And it's dealt with in the last of the resolution parts before you. We still do not have day one harmonisation of council tax. Originally, it was to be a 20-year harmonisation period. 10 years, 7 years, 2 years, whatever. There is only one fair, just, equitable way of introducing a new council tax, and that is for day one harmonisations. Every other unitary authority set up has done this. Only This particular one is looking for a harmonisation period. Even Shire Dorset is talking about day one. I wonder just why that
Councillor
Greater
Jones.
Bournemouth
Yes, we need to
doesn't
wind up now. Thank you.
want the day one harmonisation. Madam Mayor, it's not for me to write the epitaph of Christchurch Borough Council, which will, despite what was said, be destroyed. But if you do want an epitaph, you could do worse. The writing is on the wall at the top. For fidelity and freedom. It is because 9 of us, and I will defend that, didn't stick to the first, despite having been elected to defend the people of Christchurch, that all of us have lost the second. Madam Mayor, I move.
I'm just going to pause there, Councillor Jones, because I'm very conscious that this meeting is being broadcast and not everybody has the pieces of paper in front of them when they're sitting at home, as I know many people do. So I'm just going to quickly read out what we have before us. In fact, I will stand. The Council is asked to consider, we note and confirm the decision not to take further judicial proceedings to prevent reorganisation. Number 2, the Council reiterates its opposition to the future Dorset scheme, which it believes will be detrimental to the borough and its residents. Number 3, this Council expresses its sincere thanks to those who have supported the borough in opposition to the enforcement of future Dorset, in particular its present leader and deputy leader and its MP, Sir Christopher Chope. Number 4, the Council notes that of particular detriment to the borough will be the proposals for council tax harmonisation period, during which council taxpayers in Christchurch will be subsidising Poole and Bournemouth residents. Number 5, on this motion, the Council notes and commends its representatives on the Shadow Executive Committee for their sustained opposition to this iniquitous proposal and supports them in their efforts to secure day one harmonisation. Now, members and anybody else who is watching or listening, that's the motion before the Council. I'm now going to ask Councillor Hall to second the motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'd like to second the motion. And the main thing is that day one harmonisation is most important. And the leader and deputy leader have been fighting for us at many meetings with Bournemouth and Poole, and they've always supported that. Madam Mayor, this year we increased our council tax by 1% in order to give this council extra financial security. This is at a time when we sincerely hope that we will remain a sovereign council. If we could, I'd like to give this money back to our council taxpayers, but this is not possible because it would not be legal to do so. Our citizens and council taxpayers deserve to have a fair and just settlement and any future council tax set by the new unitary authority. So we must not accept any council tax setting that's not fair and ethical and disadvantages our residents, which I sincerely hope will be supported by all members of this council. Madam Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Right, does any member wish to speak on the item? Councillor Spittle is indicating. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. This appears to be another motion based on daydreams, rather than accurate financial understanding. And for this reason, I cannot support in particular items 4 and 5 concerning mutualisation of council tax from day one. May I remind members once again that one of the principal reasons that the future Dorset proposal was put forward was as a strategic response to the government's ongoing austerity programme. 87.3 million is the cumulative per annum reductions in government funding comparing 2018-19 with 2010-11 across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole councils. This excludes Christchurch's share of the funding reductions of Dorset County Council. This can be found in the consolidated medium-term financial plan update report to the last shadow executive meeting of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. As a result, by 2021, the new council will be completely reliant on the money, net of fees and charges, it raises locally to pay for local services, be that council tax or the amount of local business rates it is allowed to retain. As a born and bred resident of this borough, it has often been known that Christchurch rates are higher than Bournemouth rates. However, the rateable values of properties here in the boroughs are different. Christchurch rateable values are lower than the comparable properties in Bournemouth, so it equates 87.5% of the council tax levied, or in other words, £1,406.35 of £1,607.17 levied by Christchurch Borough Council goes towards funding the services provided by Dorset County Council as the current provider of their upper tier services. And I'm sure those who are twin hatters in this council, or in other words, members of Dorset County Council, are aware. This means that 87.5% of a household's council tax annual bill is funding such services as waste disposal, adults, children, social services, and support for schools. Local attention, as tonight, focuses on the 12.5%, in other words, 282p out of the £1,607.17 spent on services provided by Christchurch Borough Council, and whether this represents value for money. How the majority of the bill is being spent is often ignored in such debates like tonight. The background references for council tax harmonisation have been available publicly, as well as to the leader and the deputy leader, and debated in their presence on numerous occasions, repeating the same decisions that it ensures that no borough council tax levels will rise at a rate exceeding the government's referendum limits, and include freezes and or reductions to the absolute level council tax paid by Christchurch residents. Taking into account any reductions, I understand a calculation has previously been provided to the members on the Joint Committee, attended by the leader and deputy leader, that outlined the financial impact of a day one council tax harmonisation strategy, which agreed to the parameters as set out in previous resolutions. This showed that such a decision would lead to council tax foregone of, in 2019-20, day one, of 6.8 million per annum, which is 5.3 million more than is currently allowed for within the draft Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole medium-term financial plan. Having attended these meetings where the mid-term financial plan was discussed, I am aware the officers of the new authority will have a challenge with the present setup to ensure services are retained, particularly bearing in mind that Christchurch has a large percentage of elderly.
It's very interesting, but you need to get to the end.
Of elderly residents reliant on adult social services. I cannot support these two items due to my conscience, knowing that if mutualisation from day one is pursued, those very same elderly residents and also the children receiving assistance educationally, emotionally or otherwise will be at risk of not receiving the support they essentially need. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Spittle. Councillor Nottage, you're next to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to engage in a competition or a discussion about what we have to do now in terms of implementing parliamentary law, but it is parliamentary law, and we have a responsibility to actually support our Conservative government in actually making sure that happens in the way that they require it to happen. Madam Mayor, I'm going to be brief, but I wonder if I can suggest an amendment which illustrates the difference in my approach to those proposing this motion, and I do have a seconder.
Yes, Councillor.
It's to do with items 3, 4 and 5. And particularly what concerns me about this is that it is well known that at this moment in time, it is the Secretary of State's decision, which is pending, that would decide the level of council tax harmonisation from day one. The leader and the deputy leader have been part of that decision-making process, and the leader of the shadow council has in fact written, as she is required to do by law, to the Secretary of State, and they are waiting his reply. I'm surprised that members around this council are not aware of that. My amendment is that, in that it expresses its sincere thanks to all parties involved in the democratic process, including those that supported the council's position, those that voted for reorganisation, and those that left the decision to their trusted councillors. In addition, our thanks to all Dorset members of Parliament who engaged in the debate in representing their communities, totalling over 700,000 residents. Further, Madam Mayor, a special mention and congratulations to the Member of Parliament for North Dorset, Simon Hall, who has recently been seconded to the Home Office as PPS to the Home Secretary. His knowledge of the workings of local government will be invaluable in the coming months.
Councillor,
I finish by saying we are required by parliamentary law as councillors in our term to actually deliver this process to the benefit of the communities that we represent. I will do that to my best endeavours. Thank you.
Councillor, have you got a seconder for that? Councillor, put your microphone off, please, Ray. Thank you. Councillor Spittle.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm willing to second that.
Right. Councillor Nottage, can I ask you to bring the paper version of that, because it was going very fast and we need to see it, and also to say which bits of the original motion you are substituting. If you could come up, please.
3, 4 and 5. No.
Thank you, Councillor. If you could bring the piece of paper for the officer to see it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Yeah, okay. Right, so you've got. Thank you, Councillor Nottage. Right, members, we have an amendment on the table which Councillor Nottage has put before us, and Councillor Spittle has seconded. The first thing we must do is debate the amendment. Councillor Mrs. Jones, I believe you're indicating. Put your microphone on, please, Councillor. Microphone. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I cannot support this amendment. It is a total rewriting of history. I would like to think that the people out there know that the members here know that the council tax that they pay contributes towards adult care, towards looking after children, We pay our taxes, not just to Christchurch, but to Dorset Council. And they provide the services that we're being told, oh, well, you don't realise that these things are important and we have to pay for them. We have been paying for them. Members on this council have been representatives looking at these measures and taking care of these things. As for saying that we should give special thanks to a councillor that is not of this area and has done his very best to oppose the wishes of this council, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, but I cannot accept that. And I notice the deliberate omission of our own MP. So, Madam Mayor, in opposing this, may I ask that when we come to the vote, we have a recorded one?
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sorry, Councillor Nottage, you coming back?
Just a point of order. I didn't ignore the current MP for Christchurch. I said all.
And a point of order, Madam Mayor,
Dorset MPs,
which
Madam
takes
Mayor.
priority. Councillor Nottage has spoken a second time to the motion, and I do not believe that is in order.
Thank you,
There was
Councillor.
no question of him being named.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Nottage, could you pop your microphone off, please,
Yes,
for us? Thank you. I'm looking for a speaker now to the amendment. Does anybody want further debate on the amendment? Councillor Spittle, are you going to come in?
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Thank
because
you.
I did not actually speak, I just
No,
rose
I
to
know.
the second. I'm a little concerned at one of the previous speakers, because she said that we were praising a councillor out of this council.
Councillor Spittle, may I just say you have to name the speaker rather than say she? It still counts. So
All right, can I just say then, it has been spoken that the amendment should be for a councillor not in this council. But the actual proposal put forward by the former leader says an MP from North Dorset, and that's all I have to say. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Spittle. Would anybody else care to speak to the amendment? Councillor Jones, is this a different... you're speaking to the amendment and not the motion, aren't you?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand that according to standing orders, I have the right to sum up against the amendment.
If there's nobody else who wishes to speak, then that's perfectly fine, yes.
Councillor
Mr. Jones.
Jones, the procedure is that the proposer of the original motion may speak immediately before the vote is taken. However, the proposer of the amendment may speak before the proposer of the original motion. So Councillor Nottage will have a right to speak, but it may be other members who wish to speak first, Madam Mayor.
I think we've ascertained that nobody else wants to speak to the amendment. So may I ask Councillor Nottage if he wants to sum up for the amendment before Councillor Jones speaks?
Delighted, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
I think that I made this amendment with the view of actually attempting to bring councillors and residents together to understand the priority that we have set before us. And that is in essence the direction that we should be taking now. Around this table, there has to be a political solution sooner or later to enable us to achieve what a Conservative government has laid down in parliamentary law. And we have to do that. So my amendment really is to do with actually attempting to bring this council together, understanding that this is not just an issue of Christchurch, but of the whole of Dorset and the concerns that we have for 700 residents, including those that are in Christchurch. 700,000 residents, thank you. Finally, Madam Mayor, there's no individuality about the process that we are going through or that we have been through. I don't have to tell you, you read it in the newspapers about the spectre of Northampton. or the spectre of Somerset. That was actually seen over 5 years ago as huge concern, with 9 leaders coming together to understand how we could proceed in 5 years' time to deliver the services that our communities so desperately needed at the level of finance and fiscal control that the government was putting us under. Now, I have said again and again, the one thing that I haven't been able to do since 2007, since I became a councillor, was talking about enhancing services. It's always been associated with understanding how we should go about the process of paying for services or cutting them. Those generated Dorset Waste Partnership. Those generated the partnership between East Dorset, all of which helped to keep the wolf from the door. We are now in a situation where we might have the wonderful privilege as councillors for a short time to actually think about enhancing services for our community if we proceed with a sensible and deliberate policy of adhering to conservative government dictate. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nottage. And microphone. Thank you. Councillor Jones, did you want to come back before we go to the vote?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will pass over the amount of new information the previous speaker introduced into his summing up, which is meant to be a summing up of the debate. I will pick up on 2 points. First of all, it may indeed be that there are nearly 800,000 residents in Dorset. We have no mandate to speak for them. Our mandate is to speak for our representatives here, and our people in this borough told us very clearly that they do not wish to participate in future Dorset, and that is that. The second point that I would challenge is this. The words Conservative government have been raised as some sort of magic token. I need not go into the previous times that a Conservative government has done something that has turned out to be disastrous. Anybody else remember the Industrial Relations Act 1971? Anybody else remember the entry into the common market? And those points, he who says that because a party government of whatever party says we must do it and we must do it unquestioningly is the worst type of party hack. Madam Mayor, I cannot support this amendment. It fails in its purpose. It mentions an MP who has shown himself to be, in my opinion, unfitted to sit in the House of Commons by his intemperate language and his Twitter outbursts, and I certainly cannot support that. And when you compare that with the courtesy that Sir Christopher has shown at all times to his opponents, then you begin to wonder just what is happening to the Conservative Party. Madam Mayor, I sum up against the amendment and I urge the Council to refuse it.
Councillor Mrs. Jones, you've asked for a recorded vote. Can we have a seconder for that? Councillor Hall has offered to second, so we will get the papers ready for the recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I shall read out members' names in alphabetical order, and please can you say for, against or abstain?
For the amendment.
For the amendment. Councillor Abbott.
No. Against.
Councillor Bath.
For.
Councillor Bungay.
Against.
Councillor Mrs. Dedman.
Against.
Councillor Mrs. Derham Wilkes.
Abstain.
Councillor Flagg.
Against.
Councillor Geary, Councillor Grace, Councillor Hall,
Against.
Councillor Hallam, Councillor Hilliard, Councillor Mr Jameson,
Against.
Councillor Mrs Jameson,
Against.
Councillor Mr Jones,
Against.
Councillor Mrs Jones,
Against.
Councillor Lofts, Councillor Neal, Councillor Nottage, Councillor Phipps,
Against.
Councillor Smith, Councillor Spittle, Councillor Watts.
4.
Madam Mayor, that's 7 votes for, 14 against and 1 abstention. The amendment is lost.
Yes, the amendment has fallen. We're now going back to the substantive motion. Have we had all the speakers on that? Do we know? We've had all the speakers on that. Oh, Councillor Bath, you were... I'm sorry, Councillor Derham Wilkes, are you wishing to speak to the motion?
Yes, to the motion. Oh yeah, sorry.
Well, we've had the amendment, Councillor.
Yes, I do beg your pardon.
Right. Did you want to speak to the original motion?
Yes, please,
Thank you,
Madam
Councillor
Mayor.
Derham Wilkes.
I'm standing tonight to ask that we take each of these recommendations separately when it comes to the vote, please. And I'll tell you the reason why, Madam Mayor. I'm very, very pleased that number 1 says the decision, that we confirm the decision to take no further judicial proceedings to prevent reorganisation. But following on from the debate so far tonight and things that have been said time and time again in this chamber, Madam Mayor, I'm absolutely fed up and disgusted at what I hear from members around the table. I really don't think a lot of the people in this room that represent the residents have treated each other with respect in their comments. And I think this just goes to perpetuate what has been going on for a considerable amount of time. I myself do not feel I can sit in this chamber representing members of our community and be party to what has been going on for a long, long time. So I am happy, in fact pleased, to agree with point number 1, but I'm not going to sit here and vote for the rest of it. I'd rather not vote at all than be part of the to and fro that I hear in this chamber. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam.
No, it isn't up to me, it's up to the proposal. I have an array of hands here. Councillor Derham Wilkes, I am not particularly happy in taking each one. It is a motion that should stand or fall on its own merits. I do have a lot of hands up. I think Councillor Bath, you were first.
I was wanting to second the proposal made to take each item separately because there are aspects of this that I would like to support, in particular to try to get council tax harmonisation down to the same for all at the start of the new council, but there are aspects of this that I cannot support. So I would like to second it, and I believe we should take a vote on whether it should be taken separately or not.
It's a motion.
Councillor Bath, as I just said, I feel the motion should stand or fall in its entirety, but I'm going to ask the proposer of the motion for a view on this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I entirely agree with your view. It stands as an entity, and I would be extremely unhappy about removing any particular part. I would certainly vote against that if it did come to a vote, but my view is we should take the vote as it is.
Councillor Jones, thank you. Do I have any more speakers for the debate? Right, thank you. Councillor Spittle, I thought you'd spoken already.
She has.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jones, did you want to sum up before we go to the vote?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I will sum up. We've heard some interesting speeches, and all I would say to one of the comments is that I do regret the tones that have entered into the debate, and I would just say that I think to say that all those of us who are opposed to future Dorset, all we are thinking of is our own offices, is not only completely wrong, it is an extremely unwise statement. I have already said I will not be standing in the Conservative interest.
Councillor, I think you're supposed to be speaking to the motion.
Thank you.
So,
I'm summing up and replying to a point that was made.
Right.
As for shame, well, I'm not the one who is opposing the wishes of 84% of my electorate. We have had one very long and very detailed speech about council tax harmonisation, but it failed to answer the simple point. Why is it not being done in fairness from day one? The answer, as far as I understand it, was that, well, if we did, Bournemouth and Poole would have to find more money. Tough. New authority, day one harmonisation. Madam Mayor, I urge members to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Now I think that the procedure is to go to the vote. Thank you. Right, we're now talking about the motion in its entirety. I will ask all in favour to show.
14.
Those members who are against.
4.
Those members abstaining. So that's right. Okay. Yes. Thank you, members. That motion is passed. Can I just say, for the benefit of anybody that didn't realise, that Councillor Phipps has managed to join us. Thank you very much, Councillor Phipps. Which is good because she has to present her committee minutes. So, right, we're moving on now, members, to item 12, which is the committee minutes. I'm going to ask for a proposer to receive these minutes of the committee meetings. This is the last cycle of meetings. It's A to G in your pack. Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to propose that we receive those minutes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jameson, are you going to second?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to second.
Thank you. And members, we are just receiving the minutes. Sorry. Oh, Councillor Smith, were you indicating? Remembering that we're only receiving them as opposed to... fine, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members, I just wanted to refer very quickly to Minute 84, Scrutiny Policy, 17th of July, regarding the resolution and the recommendation from Scrutiny to change the Constitution to include planning urgency committees. I wanted to remind everybody of the impracticality of that. I do have the timescales. I'm not going to bore you all with them now. However, just to remind you that it would not be workable or feasible for a committee to work to the timescales involved, and I think we do need to look at it again before we change the Constitution.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Right, okay. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I chaired that meeting of the scrutiny committee, and it is my understanding that that meeting of the scrutiny committee, the concern is this: the proposals that went to council were designed, whether or not they were designed to, had the unfortunate effect of giving too much power to the officers. We are a member-led council. It is up to the members to decide what can and cannot be called in. That was why the amendments were made, and that the officers were asked to to investigate this proposal and come up with a scheme that would work. So it is not for the chairman of planning, who also sits on scrutiny, and say it won't work. It's for if it won't work, it is for the officers to come to scrutiny and say, sorry guys, we don't think it'll work for these reasons. Now, we're a member-led council or we're an officer-led council. Let's make sure that for the last 7 months we are a member-led council.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I'm going to ask Mr. Jones to come in on that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify, that's not before you this evening to make as a decision. That will go back to a relevant committee in due course.
Yes, can I reiterate, we're just receiving these minutes and then the meeting of the committee will approve the minutes. So, members, we're receiving the minutes. Are we all content with that? Thank you. Oh, well, we're all waving our hands, so thank you. Is anybody against receiving of the minutes? Thank you. We have the community committee at item E on number 12. I'm going to invite Councillor Phipps, who I'm very glad to see, to propose the recommendations arising from the meeting of the community committee, which was held on the 22nd of August of this year. It's minute number 99, the community governance review, the final recommendations, and Councillor Phipps, could you help us there, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members. I apologise for the lateness, but due to traffic, it took me 45 minutes to even exit home. Okay, so I would like to propose minute 99 of the Community Committee meeting, the 22nd of August, as set out, but with 2 small amendments. And I just want to go into the amendments and refer you to those. The 2 amendments are identical, and I'd refer members to the first one, which is on page 58. If you do want to look this up, I want you to be clear what we're doing. Paragraph 24.1 J, and in the 3rd line is to change the word from to on or before, so that the line will read, and that order be effective on or before the 1st of April 2019. And also exactly the same on page 78. At the top of the page, paragraph 34.1J, the 3rd line, again, change the word from to on or before. I hope everybody that's clear to everyone. And these small changes will allow this council some flexibility as to when we make the order effective. I hope just bear with me, because as you know, these are the final recommendations for the Community Governance Review. And I think I ought to really spell out, or briefly spell out, exactly what we agreed at Community Committee. And these are the main points. Burton Parish will remain and not be abolished, but be renamed Burton and Winkton Parish, and it will continue to have 10 councillors. Herne Parish Council should remain and not be abolished, and continue to have 6 councillors. A new parish of Highcliffe and Warkford should be established and be named Highcliffe and Warkford Neighbourhood Council, with a total of 11 councillors. It will be divided into 3 parish wards, being Highcliffe with 3 councillors, North Highcliffe and Warkford with 3, and West Highcliffe with 5 councillors. Second new parish of Christchurch should be established, and named Christchurch Town Council with a total of 19 councillors, to be divided into 5 parish wards, being Friars Cliff with 2 councillors, Grange with 3, Jumpers and St Catherine's with 6, Mudderford and Stampit with 2, and Priory with 6 councillors. It was also agreed that a new separate parish of Mudderford and Stampit should not be established. So that's the bones of it. And I'd just like to add a little bit, if I could, that about parish councils, because I do know a little bit about them. Parish councils are statutory bodies and therefore have a legal right to comment on many issues as statutory consultees, unlike residents' associations, which are non-statutory. Those comments and consultation includes local planning. And I think it's absolutely essential that local people can have their say on planning in their area, and that it's not just left to a unitary authority, which could be quite remote from where they live, and there must be local input. When Christchurch Council is abolished, Christchurch will only have 10 councillors out of 76 in the new unitary. So if there's disagreement on any issues, Christchurch councillors will always be overruled. Therefore, I think it's absolutely essential that Christchurch residents do have some local ground level representation as statutory consultees to legally put their views, and these parish councils will be it. I'd like you to note in the paperwork, which are pages 37 to 87, that 96.9% of questionnaire respondents are Christchurch residents. And also note the huge amount of long blue lines in the response charts. There's a hell of a lot of them. And these lines represent all the positive responses about retaining the existing and forming new parish councils. According to the consultation that was carried out, residents want this to happen. When our residents voted in our referendum to keep Christchurch out of the unitary, unfortunately, although the majority of us tried hard, we were unsuccessful and finally thwarted by a higher power of government legislation. This time, we have the power to do what residents say they want and agree to these parish councils in Christchurch. I believe parishes will increase the potential for local control over local matters, and they're an accountable voice for our communities. The unitary will be centralised and, as I said, remote. And the role of each parish council will be crucial. So I'd like to thank as well the members of the Task and Finish group, led by the Mayor, and the officers working with them for all the time and hard work they put into this, and I know it was a lot. So I have no hesitation in proposing this Community Committee minute to you with the small amendments which I outlined earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phipps. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Geary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to second the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Geary. Does any member wish to speak on minute number 99, Community Governance Review? Councillor Colin Jameson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the Speaker for a very eloquent summary of the 4 emerging parish councils. Sort of a question and a suggestion that whilst we have 2, Madam Mayor, we have 2 existing parish councils, it's my understanding that there will be responsibilities devolved from the unitary to the parishes. And so there becomes an initial funding issue, Madam Mayor, that they need to be set up. They need to have clerks to the various parishes, and that requires a certain amount of funding. So I just wonder, therefore, whether it is appropriate for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Overview and Policy Scrutiny Committee, to have a look at the funding mechanisms that are going to be put in place by the borough in order to set up the parishes and to perhaps give capital, money from our capital reserves into those parishes, perhaps on a pro rata basis. I don't know, it's just the first I've heard of it, but I think that that would allow the parishes to be set up properly, and the work that they would be expected to undertake devolved from the unitary to be properly funded and resourced. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jameson. Could you pop your microphone off? Thank you. That actually comes under item C of that recommendation. Can I ask Mr. Jones to speak for that?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I would, again, the Mayor is referred to as recommendation C. It's on page 37 of your agenda, and that's recommending that the Task and Finish Group continue to consider the transfer of assets, services and precept requirements for year one, and a report be presented to full council in due course. I appreciate that the councillor is referring to scrutiny in that process. Subject to your decision tonight, the intention is to kick that Task and Finish Group off fairly quickly. Time is of an essence if members are supporting the recommendations. And again, that first Task and Finish Group, it is to consider how we wish to engage wider with the membership. That could include scrutiny, but it may well include the areas that are concerned on that area. So I'm not suggesting that we exclude scrutiny, but I think the Task and Finish Group will consider those options, and that's members who will consider those. And I'm sure the Task and Finish Group have heard perhaps what the councillor has said in terms of that engagement, but ultimately it's up to members.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jones. Well, personally, I would have been happy with that. Councillor, right. Do I have anybody who wishes to speak? Is this Councillor Nottage? Thank you.
It's a question really of Councillor Phipps, a very eloquent presentation, I have to say, and well done on the consultation, everyone. Are we intending to have the same Task and Finish Group councillors dealing with the assessment of the precept?
Right, can you answer that?
Thank you. The Task and Finish Group will consider the issues around services and activities, and ultimately how that may develop into budget requirements. The council will consider the precept requirements, though. So this council, the recommendation there says that it will come back to full council here to determine the precept requirements for those new parishes.
Does any other member wish to speak? Councillor Hilliard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's a question really for the officer. He mentioned about the Task and Finish Group and engagement. Could he confirm, please, will he be engaging in particular with Highcliffe Residents Association for their neighbourhood, and similarly for the Christchurch wide Residents Association, because they need to be brought in to say what assets they want and obviously the costs involved? Thank you.
I'll pass that to the officer, thank you.
Again, I think really that's for the Task and Finish Group to consider how it wishes to engage with the wider membership and the wider public, but I would stress that time is of an essence here in terms of getting this resolved for implementation. But I don't see a reason why there wouldn't be some engagement if members wish to do that.
Councillor Bungey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's also important, one of the things that was asked on the questionnaire was whether people would be prepared to stand as councillors, because everything hangs on that. If there hadn't been sufficient people, then we couldn't be proceeding. But there were a large number of people that said yes, they would consider it. But it's also, I think, essential that we emphasise that councillors will not receive allowances, unlike this councillors. Most parish and town council sit as a body without receiving any allowances, and they sit non-politically. There are the odd council that don't, but the majority don't stand politically and don't sit as a political body. So that gives an opening to all the residents of Christchurch to be able to take part without being affiliated to any particularly political group. So I think that needs to be outlined. That there's, because I saw one or two people grin when they heard 19 councillors, thinking, "Oh well, we're back where we started with money being paid out." That's not what we are looking at. We know that the new councillors on the new unitary will get very large allowances, but that's not for Christchurch and its parish councils. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bungie. Councillor Jameson, I think you had a question to put.
Yes. Just give some clarification on what Mr. Jones was saying about assessing precepts. It's my understanding that the parish councils will set the precepts. I'm concerned about how we fund the setting up of the parish councils. How they then go about setting up their precepts, and what capital expenditure may be required to set in place the work of the parish councils in view of what is going to be devolved down to them from the military.
Was that a question? Mr. The council has to set it originally.
The new council, there are procedures for setting up new town and parish councils, and that is this council's responsibility to do that, and that will go through that exercise and can set a precept for I think it's called an anticipated precept for that parish council, for that new parish council. A new parish council will then have to, I think it's by October, date in October, decide its budget requirement, and that cannot exceed the precept that has been set. So there is work to be done. As I said, time is of the essence. We need to get progressing with that particular issue and obviously working out a lot of those issues, but it will be that there's a set process in terms of setting that precept and then the parish itself setting that budget requirement and where it allocates that money.
Yes.
The anticipated precept being set would apply to new councils, not existing parish councils, and the threshold in your route to doesn't apply to the existing parish councils. I don't believe have that threshold applied to them, and they can raise their precept by however much they wish to.
Again, the head of finance will advise me otherwise, but those existing parishes will set their budget requirements for 2019 1920 over these next few months in time for that budget setting process, and that's the mechanism already there for that. You made reference to the devolution of services and functions from the unitary. That's not again for this process to consider. That's a hypothetical future scenario that is being put, and there may well be issues there, but that will be for a future date for the existing two parishes and the two new councils, if you decide to establish them, to have dialogue with the unitary at that point in time in the future.
Can I just say, Councillor Jameson, that I want to recommend Mr. Jones, who has become very expert in all the timing of this. We're working to a very tight schedule, but Mr. Jones has worked all this out very carefully, so I think we're in pretty safe hands with it all. Councillor Spittle. Yes, put it on, that's right.
Recommendation B on your agenda on the same page delegates authority for myself to draw up reorganisation orders. Those reorganisation orders will specify all sorts of issues around the number of wards, or the name of the council, the number of wards, the number of seats on those councils. It will also identify assets to be transferred with an effective date. That will include some of the civic and ceremonial aspects that I know some members are concerned about, but it can also include other functions and services and assets of this council. The reason for that modification that the chairman of community committee put forward was so that allows us to secure the interests of Christchurch in delivering those reorganisation orders. So we're in dialogue at the moment, and the reason we've asked for that to go in is that we're in dialogue with MHCLG to ensure that that flexibility is there for us to secure those rights. But obviously at this stage, if we were organising it, we could transfer assets through that reorganisation order to parishes if they exist. They clearly don't at this point, hence that key date is important.
Councillor Bath, you were indicating.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As somebody who sits on the task and finish group, I am well versed with all the terminology around this and the process we've been through. But I think for a lot of members of the public, this is something new to them. And we're talking about precepts, and quite possibly a lot of members of the public won't even know what a precept is. And I just thought we should clarify that a precept is the cost of actually having a parish council, and how much it costs every individual council taxpayer to have a parish council and to have it operating services over and above the cost that they will have to pay for their normal council tax. So I just wanted to clarify that for any members of the public who might not be aware of what a precept is.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On a point of information, and I hope as a positive example, the Shire Authority has decided that it will view very sympathetically as possible assets being transferred to town and parishes where this is appropriate. But obviously, what we might call the money spinning assets are going to be rather kept and guarded. But there is no reason why this council cannot transfer certain types of assets as it stands and negotiate for the transfer of others. It all depends on the attitude over and above of the unit, and I do hope.
Do I have any other speakers on this? I'm looking around the table. Right, members. The recommendation as was set out. I'll wait for Councillor Jameson to take his seat again, and then we can put the proposal to the vote. Right, thank you, Councillor. All in favour of the motion, of the recommendation?
Unanimous, Madam Mayor.
That's a unanimous vote then. Thank you, councillors. Right, we have a recommendation from the Resources Committee of the 29th of August 2018. I'm going to invite Councillor Hall to propose this recommendation.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted to propose this recommendation. What I would like to say is the Resources Committee made an unanimous decision to support funding for $225,000 for bringing the ancient walls around the Priory into a good state. As this council is the landlord of this site, we're responsible for the maintenance of these Priory walls. Madam Mayor, I'd also like to take this opportunity of thanking our officer, Mr Ashley Harmon, for producing such a first-class, comprehensive report with a detailed programme of work, which I think was excellent. Thank you very much. And I have a seconder for the Deputy Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, very happy to second.
Right, do we have members wishing to speak on this? Councillor Nottage.
Well, Madam Mayor, I absolutely support this
original discussions that we had about the town centre development some 3 or 4 years ago. What concerns me a little bit is I'd like to see some more detail associated with what we're trying to do, as opposed to just exposing the walls, but to create some sort of map using placards or on those walls to show us and the public what they are, what they represent, because there are some huge history associated with those walls that most of the members of the public don't know anything about and will never know about unless we tell them. So I hope that that's going to be included in the whole proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Nottage. No, well, I'm just going to ask Councillor Hall to... No.
I am sidesman at private, 10 years suddenly got on this.
Right.
I was intending not to participate in the vote, but as we have gone into debate, and I ask
yes.
the guidance being from the officer, post of sidesman is unpaid, very little authority, it doesn't constitute an interest.
It will be a matter for yourself, Councillor Jones, to decide whether you are predetermined or biased.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in case, I will declare that there is a possibility that an impartial observer may conclude that I cannot approach this from an open mind, and I will go and examine if there are any chocolate biscuits left unguarded.
Right, Councillor, while you're doing that, I'm going to ask Councillor Hall to... Nick, can you turn that... Oh, thank you. I'm going to ask Councillor Hall to reassure Councillor Nottage, because we are on that topic of the history. Thank you, Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, and thank Councillor Nottage for his questions. So I think it's very important that we do have signs noted, but the town centre strategy are looking at that, and we have signs for various walls and other plaques around. We are getting new signs put up, and I'm sure you'll be very proud of those.
Thank you. Councillor Bath.
Lack of maintenance and repair that has occurred over many years, and I do hope that
as previous council
there is a documentation that there is maintenance built into future costs to ensure that the walls don't return to this state in the following years. They will be maintenance. So I welcome the chairman's comments on that.
Yes, Councillor, I'm being told that there will be maintenance and obviously historic walls. They've been there quite a while. Have any more speakers on this? Councillor Neil, thank you.
I'm very happy that this has actually come through to fruition now. It's been a long time, as it's been mentioned. There's been lots of conflict about this over many years, and there is a dire need because it has been a long time for done to a great degree on the wall. It will be a benefit to the residents of this borough.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Do I have any more speakers? Right, thank you then. We've had a proposer and a seconder. I'm going to put the proposal to the vote. All in favour?
And the smiling chaplain, Madam Mayor.
Yes, I think, yes, we've got the smile. Prayers answered. Thank you very much. Thank you, members. As far as I can see, we've come to the end of the meeting. Councillor Nottage, you wish to?
I wonder if I could be generous just to listen to me for another few minutes, please. Members will see on their desk a leaflet just produced by Hampshire Avon Inspection School Catchment Area. As you might remember, some 18 months ago, some year ago, I raised the question of the problems that we had from pollution in the harbour and the Arabs developing as a result of the increased nitrate into our freshwater estuary, and that I was intending, guided by the leader, I might add, and supported by the leader, to actually bring the water companies and those people associated with the responsibility making sure that our environment is safe to get together and see if we can come up with something with the help of Monaco Ward and Sanford and Fuel. We put some ward budget together and we worked with the Christchurch Harbour or the Chronicle groups, and we did in fact achieve National England, the water company, environmental agencies coming together to actually deal with problems which could have been an environmental disaster. The introduction of the coastal area, which is the Japanese weed from the Atlantic, is causing all sorts of problems. You may have remembered last year we had the concern about the odour of hydrogen sulfide. So I'm pleased to say that we are coming together. I'm pleased to say that those agencies are actually working. We're working with a PhD student who should be preparing a thesis in respect of the responsibilities that we have in respect of wildlife and crustaceans and so on and so forth. And also we are taking measurements by drone, watching carefully the introduction of this coastal area and the other green algae, which of course have had from in the past. The leaflet is there for all
yes.
councillors. We will be distributing it to those residents in Monaco and Sanford.
No.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nottage. The top table, I must say, didn't get a leaflet, so we'll pick ours up on the way out. Thank you. But I think that is the end of the meeting. Thank you. Right.
All rise.